All right. So that was The Sound of Silence, and you could probably make the argument that that song is the most important song in all of Simon and Garfunkel's catalog, because really without it, they might not have existed as we know them today. So we did cover them several weeks ago with the album that came out after this, their third album, Parsley, Sage, Rosemary and Thyme, which is when we also had that lovely discussion about herbs and spices. John wanted to throw some spices in there.
That won't
Not
get
my
removed
finest
from
moment.
YouTube. Don't worry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No copyright there.
Coming soon to a YouTube channel near you.
Josh talks about herbs is going to be like how we're going to title that one.
So if we recall, they came out with their first record, was it Wednesday morning, 3 a.m. It was mostly an acoustic album, and the Sound of Silence was on that record. That album did not sell very well. It sold approximately 3,000 copies, and that they didn't feel that they were going to be going anywhere. So shortly after that was released, Simon goes to England and to write and to perform. Garfunkel stays back and goes to grad school, probably something to do with math, because remember, this guy loves his math. But what happens during this time is that slowly but surely the song Sound of Silence starts to get some radio play. It actually started in the greater Boston area on the airwaves near Tufts University and Harvard. And starts.
It kind of had to be Boston, didn't it, Matt?
Pretty much. Yeah. So the song started making its way down to D.C., eventually down to Cocoa Beach, Florida. And Tom Wilson, famous CTS producer Tom Wilson, is making his appearance again. He picks up on this fact that this song is getting all this airplay and decides, hey, we need to try to monetize this. There could be something here. But he is concerned because the version that is playing, that's from the album, is totally acoustic, and for Wilson it was seen as too soft. So he decides to make it a rockin' piece, which... Well,
God bless Tom Wilson, because that was a really good decision.
Well, and he adds some bass and he adds some drums and guitar, slightly inspired by Dylan, who had just recently released Highway 61 Revisited, which Tom Wilson, I believe, produced that one as well. So we'll talk about that album later. So this album starts to really gain some steam, or the song gains some steam, and Simon and Garfunkel were totally unaware that he re-recorded. He didn't actually re-record it. He just took the track that already existed and put the drums and bass and guitar over it. So Simon and Garfunkel had no idea that this was happening. They didn't hear it until it was actually played on the radio. I heard that Simon was horrified when he first heard it, but he also understood that this is what needed to be done. And so shortly after that, they flew back and recorded this record. I guess there wasn't an issue with any. I guess Tom Wilson didn't need to get any permission from them, because I guess it was pretty standard for record companies to re-release and repackage songs and albums after groups had broken up. So this was actually kind of a common practice. He didn't feel the need to do that. So Simon comes back from England and gets into the studio with Garfunkel, and the record company really wants to capitalize on the success of Sound of Silence, and they come up with this album. And most of the songs on this record were actually already recorded and written. Simon, when he was in England, had produced his first album, the Paul Simon Songbook, and a number of the songs from this record are on that album, as well as some of the songs from the previous album that we covered, Parsley, Sage, Rosemary and Thyme. So really the only song that was written for this album was the song Blessed, and everything else was essentially already put out there. So they kind of rushed this. By the time, right before the album was released, the version of the redone version of Sound of Silence hit #1 on the Billboard Top 100, and this really launched the career of Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel. So this is probably their most important song that they have produced. It was later used on the Graduate soundtrack. Josh alluded to this a little bit last week, and the director Mike Nichols, he used the song to pace some of the scenes in the movie, and his intention was to actually choose other pieces of music to put over that. But he later realized there was no real better song to use than the one he was using already, so he decided to stick with it. And a couple of other Simon & Garfunkel songs were used on that soundtrack as well. So this is their second album. It was again, it was kind of a rush effort in an attempt to capitalize on their success that they were having, but it also helped set the stage for the albums that were to come afterwards. So that is The Sound of Silence. What do we think about this record? Let's start with John.
So I'd like to say Tom Wilson must be a genius, because I'm about to say something that I never in a million years thought I would say.
Oh my God.
I really enjoyed the Simon and Garfunkel album. I did.
Wow.
Folk music sounds so much better plugged in, which I already know from the catalog of Bob Dylan, because I've said that many times. But this was a really, really good album. And now I see why whenever I read about Tom Wilson, the first thing that always comes up is his prodigious skills with the ladies. And if he's making solid decisions like this one, I also can't help but think how hilarious it is that Paul Simon, not always my taste, listens to this album produced, which becomes their, what breaks them, right? And is by
probably
my
their most famous album too.
Most famous album, and for me, definitely my favorite thing I've heard from them. And says, I really hate this. And I'm like, that kind of does lend me to, okay, well then how does Paul Simon, when left to his own volition, make musical decisions? Because I don't know how you could hear this and not go, we've got something here. The songs, as many Simon and Garfunkel songs are, depends on the way that you like your songwriting. I will say a common theme is death and leaving. It seems to be in nearly every single song is either about someone dying or, either by their own hand or by tragic circumstances, or someone leaving. Like, in other words, death of a relationship or just death of any sort of a thing. So that's a common theme in this. I wonder if it was a theme with Sounds of Silence. I wonder if that was part of the theme of the writing at the time that Paul Simon was doing. But yeah, the music is great. The sounds are here, just like Parsley, Sage, Rosemary and Thyme. Nothing overstays its welcome, but the way this sounds much better, and really drew me in. And so I was highly impressed, and as a testament to trying, being open-minded, being a free thinker, like this is an easy recommend for me. This was a really good album.
John, would you say that you enjoyed because it's not all rocking, right? You have Kathy's song, you have April She Will Come, you've got A Most Peculiar Man. I mean, they're not really rock tracks. Those are more acoustic, folky songs. Did you find you liked those less, or were you surprised that you actually liked them as much as you did?
I probably like them better because it wasn't an album just full of them. They stood out more. I even liked Angie, I don't want to pronounce it incorrectly, the musical piece only. I was really impressed by. Yep, an instrumental right in the middle of the album. And it's a sprinkling of good songs throughout. There aren't many bad songs at all. Like I said, the lyrics, it's kind of standard boilerplate Paul Simon stuff. But I said it before, I'll say it again. They both can sing. They really can sing and have beautiful voices. This is a well-produced album. And boy, in particular, Art Garfunkel can really sing. I know I said that before, but I feel like it should be the dot on that I, because he stands out even amongst the two of them duetting. He's a fantastic singer. So thumbs up for me on Simon and Garfunkel, guys.
Wow.
I bet you that one surprises you. Yep.
A little bit, yeah. What about you, Josh?
Yeah. Put Tom Wilson on our CTS Hall of Fame here, because this album is a big step up from Parsley, Sage, Rosemary and Thyme, in my opinion. And what is it about this album? Like, there's so many good songs on this, and they all do something a little different. There's such a rich sound to all of the songs. And man, Paul Simon, if he can write, if he writes the music to this, he's really talented, because there's so many like different instruments and kind of like unexpected twists and turns in songs, and like changes of tempo or it changing when the chorus drops and things like that. And and I hadn't heard most of this album before. I only heard the bookends, really, Sound of Silence and I'm a Rock, and all the other songs are really good. Even the acoustic ones seemed improved from their last album. I think Somewhere They Can't Find Me is my favorite song on this album. There's a great bass line. The horns in it are really cool. I like the switching of the tempo. I think it's like right before the chorus or something. And I also got some Avett Brother vibes off of this album, Matt.
Oh, yeah?
From April Come She Will, maybe. Something like that.
You know what vibes I got from this a little bit?
The birds?
The birds, yes. The birds. It's funny you read my mind right there. I was like, and you know me, I love the birds. So I was like, wow, this is like a good Birds album, which once again was a pleasant surprise. So
yeah.
I thought that I heard that with Blessed. That's the reason I said that. I'm hearing a lot of jangle. Like that was my first thing.
More
Indian
Indian
got that
sound.
jangle guitar.
Yeah. And that seems to be Tom Wilson, right? Because he overdubbed that electric jangle.
I need to do a slight the stacks here, because Tom Wilson was involved with this, but I believe the main producer of this record was actually Bob Johnston.
Another CTS stalwart.
Hall of Famers.
Yes, he worked with Dylan. He was working with, both of them were working with Dylan, but Johnston took over after Wilson with working with Bob Dylan. But yes, both of them were involved in this. And but yeah, I heard that, and I first heard that jangle pop in Blessed, and then later on I was like, I could actually see this entire thing being a Bird song. So I certainly got that as well. I like this album a lot too. I liked it. I wouldn't say that I would say that I liked it a lot more than the last one. I think I like it a little bit more. Because I like that last record too. I agree. I think that I would say that the harmonies on this are really good. I think with a song like We've Got a Groovy Thing Going, it's an interesting way that they do the harmonies with that, because they do a couple of things with the chorus. In the beginning of the chorus, it kind of goes in one direction, and then it goes somewhere else, and the somewhere else that it goes is way better, right? When they're really going, we must be out of your mind. That part right there is like that was a great, and I think that Garfunkel, he is able to pull off some really high notes that ordinarily for most people it would be impossible to do and make sound good. Like he teeters on the edge of going too much, but he doesn't do that. He still reins it in and is able to really. I think the song that really made that stand out for me was Somewhere They Can't Find Me. He's going very high, and it sounds like he might lose it for a second, but he doesn't. He kind of hangs in there, and it makes you go, holy crap, that's got to be really hard to do, because he's totally belting that out. But I was kind of interested by the juxtaposition between Somewhere They Can't Find Me and then I don't know how to pronounce it either, John. Angie.
It's Angie, as the Rolling Stones would later sing themselves.
So Angie,
you're beautiful. All right, we had to have a little song break there.
So first of all, Josh, Simon did write all the songs on this record except Angie. That is an instrumental by folk artist Davy Graham. Who wrote that in 1961, and it's apparently it's supposed to be one of the most well-known acoustic blues folk guitar pieces ever composed. Although I had never heard it, but it seemed to me like they took Somewhere They Can't Find Me, and then the next track they just did an instrumental of it, because that guitar part is exactly the same.
Yeah.
I didn't really read any details of it. I did read somewhere that said, yes, this is basically that guitar part, but I don't know why.
Do you think they just wanted to split up? Do you think they wanted to split up Somewhere They Can't Find Me and Homeward Bound? Because Homeward Bound, I'm sure, had single potential, and it starts side 2 of the album. Do you think that might be a little bit of it?
Homeward Bound is not on this record.
No, Richard Corey's on the.
Oh, Richard Corey. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I misspoke. I apologize. Yep, Richard Corey.
I mean, maybe, but if the end of the first side is Angie. I don't know. It seemed weird to me, because the first time I heard it, I'm going, this is just a acoustic or an instrumental version of that previous song, and it's not. Oh. And Simon's credited with writing Somewhere They Can't Find Me, and I don't know if this was just maybe a space filler, like maybe if that's what you're saying, John. It's just like, hey, let's extend this a little bit.
You know what I'm realizing? What? I'm realizing that I listened to the British version of this album, which was the same track run with Homeward Bound after Angie and before Richard Corey as track 1 of side 2. And yes, so
John, you're in America. We listen to the American versions over here, okay?
Continue. It gave me a different listen, it sounds like.
That is interesting.
Matt, I thought the the Angie, I thought it was a transition almost. Like, doesn't it change? Is it the same in the beginning, but doesn't it switch up? Or
I don't think it's exactly the same, but I heard enough. That's what I'm saying. The first couple of times I heard it before I, listened to it more, read more about it, I thought they were doing this. I'm like, this is the same song. It's just an instrumental version, but it's not. And I didn't really read any more to it than that, other than acknowledging, yes, there Somewhere They Can't Find Me has the same guitar part. And Simon just wanted to play off that a little bit. And then they decided to put the actual instrumental song after it, which I just found to be an interesting thing to do. It's unique. I don't know if I know many other albums that do something like that. But I love, the singles off this. Kathy's song is beautiful. What a beautiful song that is. April Come She Will, same thing. That's another song that they used on the Graduate soundtrack. And then, I Am a Rock, man. I've always liked that song. I love the sound of it. And it's interesting to listen to these songs and compare them to the songs that Simon did on his solo record. John, my guess is you probably wouldn't like that as much as this, because there's no production behind that. It's just him and the acoustic guitar for the most part. And then you have arguably their greatest achievement, The Sound of Silence, right? Which is, and that's just a fantastic song, and it starts it off. So yeah, this is a great record. I don't think that there's the dull spot on it. Most Peculiar Man is a song that the lyrics do stand out to me a little bit, John. It's one of those things where even I, as a non-lyrics guy, can point out and go, man, that seems kind of weak. It sounds like Simon just kind of shat that out, because it was just a very, I don't know the words to describe it, but it seemed,
it's like trying to be
elementary.
Profound, and it's
but it wasn't. Even I know it wasn't good. I don't know what that was about, but a lot of
There's an old
depression
phrase,
on this.
Too cute by half, I believe, is the phrase that could work for that as a phrase. Yeah, back in the day.
Sure. But there is a lot of depression on here, right? A lot of I'm by myself. A lot of people killing themselves.
I'm a rock.
I'm a rock. I'm an island. I'm just going to stand.
No, it's
read
the
my
second
books.
half of the album is just literally one song after Richard Corey. He kills himself, and it's one song after another where the lyrics, as I'm listening to it, I'm like, okay, there's a clear theme here. Like people aren't walking out of this album, in a
Sounds
good
of Silence.
place. Yes, well, that's what I'm saying. That's why I wondered where it was like, and that's why it was. As I listened to this with Homeward Bound, the last 5 tracks were relentlessly bleak. So then it was interesting to have Homeward Bound at the beginning. And so now when I think of it as not having Homeward Bound on it, I just thought that it was on the album twice, because that used to happen back then, right? The Parsley, Sage, Rosemary and Thyme, and this.
Yeah.
But without it, it creates a very different side, too, of 5 tracks with bleak lyrics and a very thematic similarity. It was really only Homeward Bound that broke that up.
And it looks like that's the only difference. If you look at the track listing, it's just like whether you included Homeward Bound or not. So I'm not sure exactly why that happened. I didn't even look at that, because there is stuff. Sometimes you're reading about these albums and they tell you oh, this was recorded on this at this date, and then they decided to, have the track
lyrically
listing like this, and then let's change it up. So. Yeah, maybe that was why, but
in the American version, lyrically, Angie clearly breaks the first album thematically from the second, because the second album, what's left over, the second side of the U.S. album is thematically similar, and the first is less thematically coherent, not incoherent, but it doesn't have the same thematic. Yeah. So I wonder, that seems to me like maybe it was why it was placed where it was.
Yeah.
Matt, do you have any background on who Richard Corey is or who Kathy is? I was curious about that.
So Kathy is, yes. Kathy was about Kathy Chitty is her name, and she is someone that I believe Paul Simon came across earlier when he was in New York, playing in Greenwich Village, and she was I think she worked at a ticket counter at a club. And so he met her there, and they had a relationship. And she's also mentioned in some other songs. The Kathy in America that's mentioned in America is supposed to be her. So that is who that is. Richard Corey, I don't think is.
I know that one.
Oh, it's about a poem. That's right.
It's
it was
a poem. Yep.
Yeah.
The Menzingers just wrote a song about him. If are familiar with that punk band, and that's how I became aware of Richard Corey's existence.
Yeah, the song is based on an Edwin Arlington Robinson poem from 1897, and it was a song of this poem of the same title. So, which is the one interesting thing that Simon does here, though, is the poem ends with Richard Corey killing himself. like put a bullet in his head. And throughout the whole song, Simon's going, I wish I could be Richard Cory because he's this rich guy, he does all this cool stuff, he's got this great life, but then the guy ends up killing himself. So clearly things were not good. But
well, the poem is also about that. That's
right.
The
No,
end of the
but
poem.
I'm getting
Yep.
hang on. Yeah, but the poem's
Okay.
about that. But at the very end of the song, Simon still goes, I wish I was Richard Cory. Like he repeats the chorus. So it's kind of like a darker twist on it. He's like, yeah, this guy had everything great, and then he killed himself, and I still wish I was him. Like, does he wish to be dead? Like, so, but that is, yeah, it's based off that poem.
Like I said, bleak lyrical content on the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, it's interesting because I also noticed in the Stooges album, where Iggy's talking about no fun. He's like, I'm not seeing anybody. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not doing anything. This sucks. Paul Simon's loving it. He's a rock in an island, and he's just got his books, and he loves being alone. So two different takes. And both of them talk about being 21, and now I'm 22. Did you notice that?
No.
They would have been a very different 22-year-old from each other.
You don't think they hung out a lot?
I don't think they would have much in common. They would bridge the gap right there. So, nor would Garfunkel, I don't believe, with his isosceles triangles and
and
mathematical
Sudoku puzzles.
knowledge. I just would be fascinated to see that. But